behalf of the Muslims of America, I present before you a documentary film in helping and training oppressed Muslims.
They also blamed Jelani for the beheading of journalist Daniel Pearl, who was reportedly on his way to interview Jelani when he was abducted. That was back in 2002.
And we are establishing training camps.
Operating within the United States in plain sight is an abomination, and is definitely a failure of the United States government to act in its own interest.
And they're here in America, and they're hard at work at bringing about the triumph of Islamofascism.
Now, Ryan, one of the reasons you're here, and we moved you up to respond to this terror plot that could have happened earlier, but we want to talk about something else. If I think of a terror camp, I'm thinking Yemen, I'm thinking Somalia, I'm thinking Pakistan. What you're finding is we might have as many as 22 so-called villages and at least one terror camp, as even in domestically, as in Texas.
Right. The Clarion Project, who I work for, we broke this story about how a terrorist enclave has been detected in Texas. We know this from declassified FBI documents. There was originally some broad intelligence about it, and so we started investigating. We figured out the group's front organizations that they were using in Texas, and then some activists from a group called Act for America went and verified the specific location so that we made sure that we definitely knew what we were talking about. And then we got declassified FBI documents and confirmed it from that end. So we know for a fact that this organization that runs the 22 villages, as they call them, also have one in Texas.
How long has this village in Texas been running, or any of the other 22? Is that known?
Yes. The leader in Pakistan, Sheikh Jelani, came to the United States and started setting these places up in 1980. According to the locals, this specific camp started being set up in the late 1980s in Texas, and the FBI detected some movement to this camp in December of 2001.
Do we have any evidence of anything bad that they've done so far?
Yes. According, again, to the FBI documents, and this was previously known, they've engaged in all sorts of murders and bomb plots. But after one of their camps in Colorado was shut down, they decided to pull back a little bit because they didn't want to sacrifice their entire network. But they are still preaching jihad. They still follow this radical Pakistani cleric that they basically believe is God. And they are a dangerous group. And you can see it in the language of the FBI documents that we've released.
All right, here's a map of all the 22 that have been identified and looked at. Now, we think the FBI has identified this as a group to watch, but have they said a terror group, and has Homeland Security got on board with that?
Well, this is the interesting thing. They are considered a domestic organization, and because they are American citizens, it becomes very difficult to tackle them. Yes, if they find specific information about a specific individual doing something illegal, will they get them? Of course. But most of what they do is legal. They go right up to that line. And the reason they're able to operate in the United States is because the State Department doesn't consider this group, Jamaat al-Fuqra, a foreign terrorist organization. They operate in the United States under the name Muslims of the Americas. And by the way, their headquarters is in New York State. It's a place actually called Islamburg. They have a sign when you go there that says Islamburg.
We've heard about that. It's troubling. And now we know 22 villages across the country. Ryan Morrow, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
We hope they're being watched.
Muslims rejoicing in the carnage. They call themselves the Revolution Muslim. Today on their website, they called the alleged shooter, Major Hassan, an officer and a gentleman. They said, quote, "We love you." At the same time, they called the slain soldiers terrorists who are in, quote, eternal hellfire. These men are radicals, but they are also Americans, believe it or not, who praise Osama bin Laden and celebrate the 9/11 attacks. So what's so extraordinary is that we found them out in broad daylight, out on the streets of New York, trying to spread their message just a few feet from a peaceful American mosque. Drew Griffin of CNN Special Investigations Unit has this Uncovering America report.
For 20 years, the Muslim faithful have been drawn to this gleaming mosque in the heart of New York. It is time for afternoon prayers. American Muslims and Muslims from overseas, as many as 4,000, visit here every day. They come to praise Allah, give thanks, and to pray for peace. Imam Shamsi Ali preaches against terror here, against the violence that right now sweeps many Muslim countries. But just outside the gates to his mosque, radical Muslims are preaching a very different view.
How big a threat are these people who come here, well, maybe here today, and trying to reach your congregation?
Islam is about peace. Islam is about moderation. Islam is about friendship. Islam opposes any kind of hatred against anybody.
These are the brothers of Revolution Muslim.
We tell you Muslims to rise up.
They are recruiting just outside New York's 96th Street Mosque.
That the Quran commands that you disavow and make hatred and enmity between democracy, between nationalism, between secularism, and that you see Obama as the enemy he really is. That you see the United States as the enemy it really is.
Youssef al-Khattab, a Jew who lived in Israel and abruptly converted to Islam, and Yunus Abdullah Muhammad, also a convert, both born and raised in the United States, a country whose way of life they say they hate. And if you are not a Muslim, they count you as a disbeliever. Their mission? To terrorize you.
We're commanded to terrorize the disbelievers. And this is a religion, like I said.
Commanded to terrorize the disbelievers?
The Quran says very clearly in the Arabic language, Turhibuna. This means terrorize them. It's a command from Allah.
So you're commanded.
It's a terrorize them.
Terrorize.
Doesn't mean
anybody who
you define
believe.
Terrorism as going and killing an innocent civilian. That's what I define terrorism as making them fearful so that they think twice before they go rape your mother or kill your brother or go onto your land and try to steal your resources.
It is that jihadist version of Islam which allows them to conclude the killing of American soldiers overseas is justified, that the attack of 9/11 was also justified, and that an attack on almost any American is justified.
Americans will always be a target and a legitimate target until America changes its nature in the international arena.
In separate and disturbing interviews, both look to one man as the true living model of Islam, Osama bin Laden.
I love Osama bin Laden. Wallahi, I love him like I can't begin to tell you, because I haven't seen that he's really done anything wrong from the Sharia. I love him like more than I love myself.
What they want is U.S. forces to be defeated for a Muslim holy land stretching from China to Rome. And yes, they yearn for the day Israel will vanish.
So you would like Israel to be bombed, Jews to...
I think that's... Do you think that's a rational comeback?
I'm asking you.
I would like to see Israel wiped off the map. I would like to see a mushroom cloud over it. But before that, I'd like to see the people guided, and I'd like them to go back to their original countries where they're from.
They may seem crazy to you, but you are not their target audience. The FBI has assigned agents to watch them, to monitor their website, and perhaps more importantly, watch those who are viewing and listening. Like Neil Bryant Venus, a young New Yorker who has pled guilty in a plot to blow up the Long Island Railroad. He met with and admired Khattab.
I just knew that he was a good Muslim brother, and that was it.
Khattab claims friendship with Tariq Mehana and Daniel Maldonado. Maldonado arrested and pled guilty in Texas to receiving military training with Somali terrorists. Mehana was just indicted in Boston, conspiring to provide material support to terrorists. The Revolution Muslim partners say they do not fight themselves and do not incite others to fight. But make no mistake, they want you to become a Muslim. They want Americans to die.
I would not do it myself. That's what I said. Is Obama a murderer, a tyrant, a scumbag? Absolutely, he is. If they killed him, would I shed a tear? Absolutely, I would not. Would I say that? Would I incite his murder? That's not what we don't preach that.
The mosques have tried to prevent that kind of hatred from being preached by calling police. But there is little police or even the FBI can do to stop these radicalizers. They are protected by legal rights given in a country they detest.
Enjoying the life and the pleasures of this.
Drew, you've been working on this piece for a while. It just coincides with this shooting on the base. It's sickening, of course, in the wake of the shootings, especially to hear what these folks are saying. Just, not too many blocks from where I'm sitting right now. Right. How can they get away with this?
Anderson, that's what I wanted to know. How could they say this stuff? How could they be on the web saying this stuff? And right after...
Good evening and welcome to 10 News. The violent anti-US protest that shut down Sydney, turning the city's streets into a bloody battlefield, have been condemned by leaders on all levels.
6 police officers and 17 others were injured when the demonstration spiralled into chaos. 6 men were charged, 1 faced court today. 10's Gabrielle Boyle was there. Gabby, good evening to you. Who is this man?
Well, Ahmed Almar is tonight behind bars after a magistrate refused him bail. He will return to court on Tuesday. We are learning a few more facts about one of the men that police allege was involved in yesterday's violent scenes in Sydney's CBD. We now know he was a father of 3, a married man and a working man. We heard in court today, however, that he did have a criminal record. Here's how the day unfolded in court.
10 News cameras capture Ahmed Elmore at the very centre of yesterday's violent CBD riots. But the 29-year-old claimed in court today he was an innocent bystander, pushed, shoved and caught up in a case of over-policing. The married father of 3 is a former professional boxing champion.
Ahmed Trigger Elmar!
They freak out a bit because I've never seen a Lebanese cowboy before,
Elmar's supporters, some of who attended yesterday's protest, were in court as he was refused bail. The magistrate citing his 6-page-long criminal record, which includes assault, malicious damage and repeated convictions for driving while disqualified. Police have established Strike Force McAllister, a response to what they are calling an unscheduled and unauthorised rabble.
Being quite blunt, we didn't know what to expect yesterday because we had no contact, no leadership, no control and no advice.
To see a young child with a placard thrust in his hand calling for the beheading of a person is simply something I cannot comprehend.
The sickening scenes uniting our politicians in outrage.
Newcomers to this country are not expected to surrender their heritage, but they are expected to surrender their hatreds.
This is not Libya, it's not Yemen, it's not Sudan.
I unequivocally condemn the whole tone and tenor of that demonstration. It didn't speak for Islamic Australians.
This kind of conduct has got no place on the streets of our country.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace to you all. My name is Saba Ahmed. I'm a law student at American University. I am here to ask you a simple question. I know that we portray Islam and all Muslims as bad, but there's 1.8 billion Muslim followers of Islam. We have 8 million plus Muslim Americans in this country, and I don't see them represented here. But my question is, how can we fight an ideological war with weapons? How can we ever end this war? The jihadist ideology that you talk about, it's an ideology. How can you ever win this thing if you don't address it ideologically?
Great question. I am so glad you're here, and I am so glad you brought that up because it gives us an opportunity to answer. What I find so amazing is since the beginning of this panel, which we are here about Benghazi attack against our people, not one person mentioned Muslims. We are here against Islam, or we're launching war against Muslims. We are here to discuss how 4 Americans died and what our government is doing. We were not here to bash Muslims. You were the one who brought up the issue about most Muslims, not us. And since you brought it up, allow me to elaborate with my answer. There are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world today. Of course, not all of them are radicals. The majority of them are peaceful people. The radicals are estimated to be between 15 to 25% according to all intelligence services around the world. That leaves 75% of them peaceful people. But when you look at 15 to 25% of the world Muslim population, you're looking at 180 million to 300 million people dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization. That is as big of the United States. So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. When you look throughout history, when you look at all the lessons of history, most Germans were peaceful. Yet the Nazis drove the agenda. And as a result, 60 million people died. Almost 14 million in concentration camps. 6 million were Jews. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Russia, most Russians were peaceful as well. Yet the Russians were able to kill 20 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. On September 11th in the United States, we had 2.3 million Arab Muslims living in the United States. It took 19 hijackers, 19 radicals to bring America down to its knees, destroy the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon, and kill almost 3,000 Americans that day. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. So for all our powers of reasons and us talking about moderate and peaceful Muslims, I'm glad you're here. But where are the others speaking out? And since you are the only Muslim representative, save the applause till the end. And since you're the only Muslim representative in here, you took the limelight instead of speaking about why our government, and I assume, are you an American? You're an American citizen. So as an American citizen, you sat in this room and instead of standing up and saying a question or asking something about our 4 Americans that died and what our government is doing to correct the problem, you stood there to make a point about peaceful, moderate Muslims. I wish you brought 10 with you to question about how we can hold our government responsible. It is time we take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs and start calling it fair.
Thank you very much. Other story today, military and the congressional sources are telling Fox that Hezbollah operatives are now working with a Mexican drug cartel. Our Adam Housley is live from our Los Angeles bureau with more on that. Adam?
We're right on our border.
Yeah, Hezbollah's, they've been in Latin America for some time. In fact, it's been well documented that Hezbollah has been working in the tri-border region in South America, which is down near Brazil and Argentina. It's been documented by us that they've been in Venezuela for a number of years. The connections, of course, are very obvious with Venezuela and Iran, which is the main supporter of Hezbollah. But the worry has been for some time amongst U.S. officials that Hezbollah would spread from the influence in South America up through Central America and right on our border. Now, we know of a couple of things. First of all, a Hezbollah operative was arrested back in 2003 in Detroit and came through Mexico. We do know the Mexican authorities have told us that last fall they busted a Hezbollah recruitment cell outside of Tijuana. Both disturbing facts, but when you talk to people within the government of the U.S., they'll tell you it's not surprising at all that Hezbollah is working with the drug cartels. They're basically rubbing shoulders. We had a chance to talk with Mike Braun, a former head of the DEA, Chief of Operations, and he says this threat is very, very serious, and he's very concerned about it. Take a listen.
Has not recognized that connection between those Mexican cartels and their operatives in the United States, and what that has to potentially offer Hezbollah, then they're simply missing the boat.
Yeah, and DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has told us that between 2007 and the middle of last year, about 180,000 people were captured that are called other than Mexicans, people that were not from Latin America, basically, trying to cross in. Those are the ones that were caught. Meantime, we've been told today that less than 40% of our border is secure. On top of that, we know over the weekend that the Mexican government has moved a significant number of troops to the north along the border. Now, we're being told by some people in Mexico that could be in response to this increased threat, because Mexico knows if they don't respond to it, it just gives them another problem to deal with. Already, of course, they have the major cartel situation. Now, a number of people in Congress are saying that this administration, the Obama administration, really isn't doing enough to address what's going on, address the threat with Hezbollah. In fact, the Homeland Security chief said last week that she was concerned that down the road Al-Qaeda would work with the cartels, but people in Congress say it's already Hezbollah, and the Obama administration needs to do more. Take a listen.
I think the question that we all have to ask is, when the terrorists come into Latin America, when they move into Mexico, how many have come into the United States? We don't know. Our government doesn't know the answer to that question. That should make all of us very fearful.
Now, it's all about following the money. It's very simple. Hezbollah, of course, has been supported by Iran for years, but everyone is telling us that they now get a significant amount of more money, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars from the global cocaine trade that they are moving from Latin America through Africa into Europe, as well as up through Mexico. And that money is feeding Hezbollah's operatives around the globe, especially in the Middle East. Lauren?
Adam, you know, one of the things we're talking about, because of Hezbollah, they're trying to infiltrate the U.S. I mean, is that a major concern for the U.S. government, for the Obama administration, or is it primarily, you know, the drug cartel issue?
Well, I think that they will tell you that's a major concern. I mean, I don't think that anybody can argue that last administration or this administration wasn't concerned about the border. The question is how they're going about it. Some of the people we talked to, again, within the federal government, both military and Department of Homeland Security, will tell you their concerns, and the signs are all there. Not only do you have the operative that was busted, not only do you, in 03, not only do you have the cell that was busted by the Mexicans, at least they claim last fall, but now you have these very intricate tunnels being dug. They say that's coming from help from outside, because the tunnels that go into, for example, the Gaza Strip are very intricate. They're seeing the same types of tunnels now show up in Mexico. They're seeing more sophisticated car bombs showing up as the cartels have their own war, for example, south of the border with each other. So what they're saying is, not only do you have these signs of the actual recruitment cells and the guy that was busted back in 2003 here on our soil, but you're now seeing other things that are really showing in their mind that Hezbollah is here and they're rubbing shoulders with the cartels.
Very, very interesting. All right, thank you very much, Adam Housley from our Los Angeles Bureau, watching the borders with Mexico. Thank you so much.
Mr. Speaker, on May of 2011, President Obama gave a speech in El Paso, Texas, where he effectively said, "Mission accomplished, our border is secured." In fact, he mocked those of us who disagreed with him, suggesting that we wouldn't be happy until there was a moat guarding our southern border. Mr. Speaker, as we witness tens of thousands of children crossing our border today, I hope the President remembers his speech in El Paso and owns up to his administration's failure in enforcing our immigration policy. We need a secure border before we can address any kind of immigration reform, which is why I'm a proud co-sponsor of H.R. 2220, the Smart Border Protection Act. Tough, smart legislation to finally get operational control over our nation's borders. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
Now that Muslim cleric Chowdhury is planning a protest outside the White House. He's calling on Muslims to establish Sharia law in America. And joining me now from London is Mr. Chowdhury. Good morning to you.
Yes, good morning.
Now, I understand that you're calling for this protest at the White House on March 3rd. So you're going to come to this country. And what are you going to say at this protest?
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me on your program. It's always a pleasure to be able to introduce Islam and to talk about this great religion. We are going to, inshallah, invite the Muslims and the non-Muslims in America to talk about Islam as an alternative to the freedom, democracy, and the man-made law that you have at the current time in America.
But I'm not so sure that your definition of Islam is how many members of the Muslim faith who live here in America would describe it. Because you believe in Sharia law, and I'm not so sure that every Muslim in America, in fact, I know for sure they don't all agree with that.
Well, I certainly believe that there is a decline, in fact, in the world today because we don't have the Sharia implemented on state level, and therefore there's no education system to teach people that, in fact, Islam has a solution for all affairs within society. But I think we need to have a healthy discussion about what is the way forward for mankind, whether it's democracy and freedom or whether it's Islam.
Well, I can tell you one
Islam,
thing. Americans don't want Sharia law. So I can tell you one thing. Americans do not want Sharia law, so I'm not sure how successful your protest is going to be or march here. But before you go, I want to find out, do you actually believe that you can get into this country? Yeah. Will you be able to fill out the application accurately when you're asked these questions? Because the tourist visa will require you to answer these questions. Have you been involved in acts of terrorism or plan to commit crimes in the United States? How will you answer those questions?
Well, look, I've never been convicted of any criminal offence. I've never been convicted of any terrorist-related offences. I believe that the Muslims in America and indeed in Britain live under a covenant of security. They cannot target the life and the wealth of the people in return for their life and wealth being protected. But, according to your own First Amendment, you have the right to establish your religion. But you see, unlike Christianity, our religion is not confined to the mosque. It should be something which is implemented within society. Therefore, I invite Barack Obama and the American administration and the people to think about Islam as an alternative way of life.
I want people to know a little bit more about you and who you are. Let me give you, for example, the Muslim Brotherhood's motto, which is their motto today: Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way, and dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. Allahu Akbar. Do you agree with that motto?
Yes, I mean, which Muslim would not agree with that? We do believe as Muslims that sovereignty and supremacy belongs to God. In fact, in the world today, there are two camps. One which believes that sovereignty belongs to man, at the head of which, is at the moment probably Barack Obama, and the other one which believes that sovereignty belongs to Allah, to God. And at the head of that, whether we like it or not, is Sheikh Osama bin Laden.
Women are stoned to death in Egypt. Women can't drive under Sharia in Saudi Arabia. You yourself, sir. Let me finish my question. You yourself, people who commit adultery should be stoned to death. You said that. You said that Egypt and America one day will be under Sharia law. You said every woman, Muslim or non-Muslim, would have to wear a burqa. Did you not say that, sir?
What I said was, in fact, and what I continue to repeat, is that I do believe that the whole world will one day be governed by the Sharia. That is a promise of the best man who walked the earth, the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Did you or did you not say people who commit adultery should be stoned to death? Did you say that?
That is not my statement, but I believe that.
You believe that every woman, non-Muslim, Muslim woman should wear a burqa. You're a fascist. You want to ram that down people's throats. You want to cut off people's hands. Excuse me, I'm not finished. You want to cut off people's hands that steal. You want to stone people to death if they commit adultery. You want to rob Israel's land, and you're justified. And I believe, although you don't have the courage to admit it because you're a bit of a coward, that you believe that people that killed 3,000 Americans are going to heaven and they're going to get 72 virgins. So don't you see, can you not stand back from your sick, twisted, bizarre ideology here to see that those 3,000 people were innocent victims, sir? Can you not see that?
You know, Mr. Hannity, you have a truth phobia. Whenever I turn the table on you and I talk about the reality, you want to avoid it, you want to talk over me. Your viewers will see through your lies and your propaganda.
My lies, my propaganda.
The Americans are the biggest criminals, in the world today. They are bombing Muslims, they're occupying our land. Yes, I believe in the Sharia. I believe sovereignty belongs to God. And the Sharia will come to America.
And you believe in virgins in heaven, don't you?
It will remove the corruption of democracy and freedom and all of your exploitation. You are worried because you know Islam is coming to your backyard. And you cannot tolerate that.
I'm a non-believer. I'm an infidel. I mean, should I, if I don't convert to Islam, should I die?
No, you can live under the Sharia. Your food
I can live
and
under
clothing and
Sharia.
shelter will be
Oh,
provided.
thank you, sir. Please, I thank you oh so very much.
Your food, clothing, and shelter will be provided, and you will not be exploited, unlike as in America and in Britain and in the Western countries. You will have the basic rights, and of course, you will live as a citizen.
Yeah, well, you're one sick, miserable, evil SOB, but thank you for coming on anyway.
Finally, Mr. President, your visit speaks to a truth of our time in North America and the world. In the 21st century, we are defined not by our borders, but by our bonds.
It has been revealed that the Obama regime has an extremely close, yet secret, relationship with the ousted Muslim Brotherhood regime of Mohammed Morsi. Using extensive documents and eyewitness testimony, Egyptian lawmakers have submitted a criminal complaint naming Barack Obama as an accessory to the Muslim Brotherhood's crimes against its own citizens. Per the complaint, Obama, quote, cooperated, incited, and assisted the armed elements of the Muslim Brotherhood in the commissions of crimes. These crimes include murder, rape, torture, even ethnic cleansing, specifically the mass murder of Egyptian Copts, Christians. Documents have also surfaced showing the Obama regime was secretly funneling millions of dollars to high-ranking Muslim Brotherhood members, ostensibly charged with rounding up and killing anyone who opposed the Mohammed Morsi regime, which included the crucifixion of Christians. In a second criminal complaint submitted to Egypt's Attorney General Hisham Barakat on December 13, 2013, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has been named as a collaborator with the wife of Mohammed Morsi, Nagla Ali Mahmoud, in seeking to overthrow the current leader of Egypt, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Morsi's wife has said openly on Turkey's Anatolia News that the Clinton relationship has gone back decades to the 1980s when Nagla Ali Mahmoud was living in the United States. Per Mahmoud, she is in possession of hundreds of telephone recordings that include Clinton and other unnamed officials in the White House. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. As widely reported in Egyptian media, Barack Obama, with Clinton's help, secretly bribed the Muslim Brotherhood with a staggering $8 billion to guarantee that the huge tract of land, the Sinai Peninsula, be turned over to the Muslim Brotherhood's sister group, Hamas. Signatories to this agreement include Obama, Mohammed Morsi, and Hayat al-Shatur, the second in command in the Muslim Brotherhood hierarchy, under arrest along with Mohammed Morsi. Hayat al-Shatur states that he is in possession of additional documents that will land our president, Barack Obama, in prison. Why would Barack Obama want the Sinai Peninsula turned over to the terrorist group Hamas? Hamas has vowed to annihilate the Jewish people down to every last man, woman, and child. Being in possession of the Sinai Peninsula would have put Israel in an indefensible position, leading to their destruction. If the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood had not been locked up and Hamas driven out of Egypt, the Jewish people surely would have been annihilated. Hitler's final solution would finally have been realized. This modern-day Hitler, Barack Obama, must be stopped. Impeachment and arrest and imprisonment must begin immediately.
Nearly 9 years after 9/11, the United States is still facing a major terror threat. You may be surprised to learn who agents are catching trying to cross the border from Mexico. We reviewed congressional reports and traveled to the Southwest to find a threat that affects us here in Metro Atlanta. The Border Patrol uses choppers, ATVs, and horses to patrol the 2,000-mile southwest border. Most of the illegals caught crossing are from Mexico or South America, but thousands are classified as OTMs, other than Mexicans, including hundreds from nations that sponsor terror. These are the records we obtained at this federal detention center near Phoenix, Arizona. We found illegals from Afghanistan, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, Sudan, and Yemen in custody.
We have left the back door to the United States open.
Former Arizona Congressman J.D. Hayworth has seen the intelligence reports.
And we have to understand that there are people who definitely mean to do us harm who have crossed that border.
This Arizona rancher doesn't want to be identified because he fears the Mexican cartels who smuggle drugs and people near his property. This Muslim prayer rug was found on his ranch.
It's just one more indicator that there's a whole lot more than just a few poor Mexicans coming into the United States.
There's more. This congressional report on border threats confirms members of Hezbollah have crossed the southwest border. It also contains photos of military jackets found on the border. The Arab insignia reads, "Martyr, way to eternal life." The other depicts a plane crashing into the Twin Towers.
The American public has been kept in the dark about this whole issue.
Dave Stoddard was a Border Patrol agent for 20 years. He worries about the dangerous people who get through and may be living among us.
In my experience, for every one apprehended, there was at least 10 that would escape apprehension.
The congressional report also reveals the route Middle Easterners take. They travel from Europe to South America to the tri-border region, where they learn to speak Spanish, then travel to Mexico and blend in with other illegals heading to this country.
One of the world's most wanted terrorists was actually spotted in Atlanta, and speculation is that he came up through the mountains into this country through the Mexican border.
Adnan Shurkajuma is a Saudi Arabian pilot and bomb expert with a $5 million bounty on his head. Federal agents verified he spent time in Atlanta just prior to 9/11 and left on a bus. In 2004, Shurkajuma was one of 7 al-Qaeda members the feds were looking for after they were spotted in Central America and believed to be heading for the U.S. The most grave concern from the congressional report, that Mexican drug cartels will help terrorists smuggle weapons across remote border crossings.
Because if we learn nothing from 9/11, certainly we should have learned that borders are important.
Those militants tearing Iraq apart, boasting of their brutality with those images we showed you at the top. Tonight we're learning more about them and about the man who leads them. He spent years in U.S. custody. ABC's chief foreign correspondent Terry Moran is in northern Iraq tonight, where those militants have already taken over.
They are fierce, battle-hardened fighters, religious zealots, merciless killers. But the jihadists of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS as they're known, they have a strategy, and it's working. They use social media as a weapon. Many of the images in this story come from accounts associated with ISIS and can't be verified. Those pictures of mass executions, Iraqi soldiers in civilian clothes taken prisoner, bound, packed into trucks, laid out on the ground, and savagely executed, they struck terror across Iraq. But some Iraqis actually support ISIS, Sunnis who feel oppressed by the Shia-dominated government in Baghdad.
500,000 people fled the city of Mosul, Iraq's second largest, when the jihadists took it over. These people are willing to go back. They are going home. They tell us they have no place else to go. And they say ISIS is turning on the lights, paying government workers, trying to set up a state. But far more, as far as the eye can see, are still fleeing the rule of the jihadists.
U.S. leaders say ISIS must be stopped.
These are the vicious, the worst of the worst.
The leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was in U.S. custody in Iraq for 4 years. When he was released in 2009, his parting words to U.S. troops, "I'll see you in New York."
Approval to go into Syria.
You know, I have consulted with Congress throughout this process. I am confident that as Commander-in-Chief, I have the authorities to engage in the acts that we are conducting currently. As our strategy develops, we will continue to consult with Congress, and I do think that it'll be important for Congress to weigh in, and or that our consultations with Congress continue to develop, so that the American people are part of the debate. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't have a strategy yet, and I think that's not just my assessment, but the assessment of our military as well. We need to make sure that we've got clear plans, that we're developing them. At that point, I will consult with Congress.
First off, let's start with a man of great integrity who's attacking him based on what he said. That's Representative Peter King. For him to walk out, I'm not trying to be trivial here, in a light tan suit, saying that first he wants to talk about what most Americans care about, the revision of second quarter numbers on the economy. This is a week after Jim Foley was beheaded, and he's trying to act like real Americans care about the economy, not about ISIS and not about terrorism. And then he goes on to say that he has no strategy. Our government and allied governments reacting to the current level of threat from ISIS, and how is the United States population reacting? So the UK is going to be raising their terror threat level. Yeah, that's still a thing from back in like 2004, 2005. That's still happening. David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Britain, says, the root cause of this threat to our security is quite clear. It is a poisonous ideology of Islamist extremism that is condemned by all faiths and by all faith leaders. And so they have raised their threat level to severe. The severe threat level is the second highest on the scale, above substantial, which apparently it's always substantial. You can't go below that, apparently. But below critical, which designates a situation where an attack is imminently expected. So we just know it's coming up soon. But the United States is not going to be raising its terror threat level, thank God. As it relates to the United States National Terror Alert System, I don't anticipate at this point that there's a plan to change that level, says Josh Earnest there.
Think terror training camps are only located in places like Pakistan? Think again. Our next guest has proof that radical Muslims are training to wage jihad right here in our own backyards. And
thanks, Peter. Are radical Muslim jihadists training right under our noses on American soil? Well, according to a new book, dozens of terrorist training compounds have been scattered across the United States of America for more than 3 decades.
And joining us now is the author of Twilight in America and the founder and president of the Christian Action Network, Martin Moyer. Good to see you. How'd you become interested in trying to see how many of these camps exist right under our noses?
Well, we had been writing some issues about radical Islam, and an FBI agent came up to our office and said, do you understand you have a terrorist compound of Islamic Muslim training about 30 miles from your office, so you better be careful with what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's how we came in arrested.
Also, I understand a guy who was recruited out of prison to live and wound up living with these people at the terror training camps who'd been working with the NYPD. A fellow by the name of Ali Aziz came up to you and he goes, look, I got to tell you the story, because if people knew what was going on here, they'd be horrified.
Yeah, you know, Steve, most people have never heard of Jamaat al-Furqa in the United States. It's a very foreign name, but almost everybody's heard of Wall Street Journal Daniel Pearl.
Sure.
And Daniel Pearl was on his way to investigate the leader of these compounds in America when he was kidnapped and beheaded and dismembered. This book and what Ali has to say pretty much tells the rest of Daniel Pearl's investigation, that they've been here for over 3 decades, that they have committed assassinations and murders and kidnappings, that they're involved in drug running and gun running, that their whole goal is to purify Islam through violence. But what Ali had to say was even more shocking. He spent 8 years inside of these terrorist camps as an undercover agent for the NYPD. And he basically told me the 3 M's. That is, they're still engaging in murder, and that they still do military training, jihadist training, to strike and attack such objects as water treatment plants, nuclear power facilities, and that he calls them modern warrior slaves. Very frightening stuff what he had to tell us.
I want to take a look at a map, because these are the 17 camps that Fox News has been able to confirm through our brain room. You can see that the majority of them are throughout the southeast and northeast corridor. Do law enforcement officials, Martin, know about all of these, and are they monitoring them and watching them?
You know, there's a lot of different law enforcement agencies involved here. Most of these camps are in rural America, so they're in the backyards of America with very, very small police departments. In Hancock, New York, for instance, the entire police department is made up of just 5 officers to watch this 80-acre compound that headquarters this Jamaat camp.
And we just showed, Martin, the map that shows 17. Those are the ones we've been able to confirm. You say there are a lot more out there. We just showed some video. What are they doing? What are they doing at these camps?
Well, according to Ali, they're training for jihad against America.
To kill people.
To kill people.
So it's just, this looks like one of those Taliban or, one of the Al-Qaeda training camps that we saw 10 years ago.
He said, you have to understand this. These people start at the age of 17 on these compounds with one goal, and that is to wage a holy war against America. He said they are proud to be gangsters.
And these are Americans, right?
All of these are Americans, yes, indeed.
And where are they recruiting people to come to these camps?
Well, a lot of them are recruited out of prison, but the really important ones, the ones that exceed, are then sent to Pakistan to train under Sheikh Jelani's military compounds he has there, then sent back to the American camps to further the training of the people that live in the United States.
I got a feeling after we put up that map with all the camps in the eastern third of the United States, you're probably going to sell a bunch of books in those areas so people know what's going on in their own neck of the woods. Twilight in America, Martin Moyer, we thank you very much for joining us live.
All right, thank you very much.
As ISIS continues its murdering rampage, alarming words from the U.S. Secretary of Defense about the threat the group poses to Americans.
Oh, this is beyond anything that we've seen, so we must prepare for everything. And the only way you do that is you take a cold, steely, hard look at it and get ready.
But ready for what? U.S. officials insist there are no ISIS sleeper cells in the U.S. right now. But U.S. intelligence agencies are worried some Americans fighting with ISIS overseas could come back to this country and carry out attacks.
They're beyond just a terrorist group. They marry ideology, a sophistication of strategic and tactical military prowess. They are tremendously well funded.
This is an organization that has an apocalyptic end-of-days strategic vision, and which will eventually have to be defeated. Can they be defeated without addressing that part of their organization which resides in Syria? The answer is no. That will have to be addressed on both sides of what is essentially at this point a non-existent border.
For now, U.S. military strategy remains limited to airstrikes inside Iraq, not in Syria, ISIS's home base. But there has been the first U.S. military mission into Syria with the acknowledgement of a failed July 4th raid to rescue James Foley and other American hostages. The Pentagon insists it wasn't an intelligence failure.
Intelligence doesn't come wrapped in a package with a bow. It is a mosaic of many pictures, of many factors.
Tonight's iftar is a ritual that is also being carried out this Ramadan at kitchen tables and mosques in all 50 states. Islam, as we know, is part of America.
من يحققها من يحققها من يحققها فاز بالرضوان ويا أسود الله يا أسود الله يا أسود الله حاكم القرآن شرعنا قادم شرعنا قادم شرعنا قادم يا بني علمان عسكر الطاغوت عسكر الطاغوت عسكر الطاغوت غزوكم قد حان كيف ناصرتم كيف ناصرتم كيف ناصرتم جيش الامريكان ينغماس يسر ينغماس يسر ينغماس يسر وانسف البنيان في مكاتبهم في مكاتبهم في مكاتبهم أشعل النيران حور في الجنة حور في الجنة حور في الجنة تسبي الأذهان مهرها الدقمة مهرها الدقمة مهرها الدقمة سارعوا يا اخوان وشركوا الشاصات شركوا الشاصات شركوا الشاصات وزينوا العرسان نادت الجنة نادت الجنة نادت الجنة وينها الفرسان